Hello and welcome to EvilGinger Miniatures, where I'm once again doing a bit of recording in the small hours of the morning because this is about the only time it's cool enough in this office to actually sit here for any length of time and talk to people. It has been deeply unpleasantly hot in the UK, and as this is an old house and it's built to retain heat, and once it gets to temperature, it works like a storage heater, so it's only ever cool sort of first thing in the morning when it's had all night to radiate it away. What am I here doing? Well, I'm talking about a mistake. Now, we've all made mistakes modelling. I've made an awful lot of mistakes, but mostly they're learning mistakes. I mean, I learnt a long time ago not to stick on shields on models if you could, most of the time, because you need to paint behind them and the shields got in the way, and you would always be able to see unpainted bits behind the shield if you didn't paint behind the shield properly. So little details like that we'll learn little tricks, and the whole is part of life's learning experience. And this week I learnt something, well, late last week and early this week, I learnt something new. I got another project which was to do some 1/1200 sailing ships. I'd done them previously. I did some American Civil War sailing ships and some Napoleonic ones, but they were Navwar metal, and they were something of a nightmare, largely because Navwar's casting quality was never good, so they're quite flashy. So you had to work out what was flash and what was actually a detail on the model some of the time. And multi-part metal kits never glue together that well, and if you're having to glue them together while you're doing them and you're knocking bits off as you're doing the next bits, it was very much like doing early Citadel metal models with them being pretty much self-disassembling. So I got put off Napoleonic ships. I passed them on to someone who would put up with it, but recently I was asked to do some ships, so I said I'd give them a go, because they weren't metal, they were 3D prints, and I looked at the website and they looked pretty okay, and they didn't look like there was anything too unduly complicated about them. So I got them and I got stuck into them. Unfortunately, I made a number of mistakes, which I can't fix. This is already irritating because I make mistakes all the time when I'm painting, but I generally can fix them. This is what experience as a painter does. You bodge something and you think, oh, if I do X, Y, and Z, I don't have to put it in the stripper, I can restart it. First thing I did that was silly was I forgot that the most delicate part of these, and let me bear with me a second while I turn off this light, because it helps me to see while I'm painting, which I've just been doing, but it rather washes everything out when I'm trying to show you stuff. This is a third-rater 1200 scale ship. Now, the first thing I did wrong was I didn't centre it in the base such that the bowsprit wasn't sticking over the end. Now, it's not sticking over the end very much, but it's a very fragile piece, and if you reach down, it could catch on foam or something like that and break off quite easily. So that was mistake number one. Mistake number two, that could have been fixed by removing the model from the base and repositioning it. However, I had the clever idea, and it wasn't really a mistake, because if it had been lined up properly, it wouldn't have been a mistake, it would have looked quite good, was to merely put some wake on there. So this is very, very firmly attached. Also, the hull isn't solid, so I can't use that much force on it to move it without crushing the hull. So that's pretty much stuck as it is, with its bowsprit sticking slightly over the end. This is annoying, and I did it to both the third raters, which are the big ones. So that I would have to do another model to fix, and I'm going to do. They're on the way in the post. Next thing is this one, which is the 5th rate, which is a small frigate rather than the big heavy frigate like the ones I've previously shown you. Now, the problem with this one is I dropped it on the floor, and I thought I'd got away with it, but I hadn't. I'd clipped the top of one of the main mast, and I'm not happy with it because all the other masts have got a little flag on them. This is a brig. I'll talk about it in a minute. Basically, and this hasn't, and I don't think I could replace it, and I've no idea where it went. It has disappeared. I've also decided while painting them that they would probably been a lot easier had I painted them before, had I painted a lot of it separately before I assembled it, because my default activity with a model is to paint it, is to assemble it, then paint it. This isn't always the best thing, and this is one of the cases where I think it is not the best thing. Basically, what I would do is I would paint the hull the bottom dark colour, sort of the tarred wood. Then I would paint the upper lighter wood colour and the even lighter deck, and I'd put washes over that. Then I would put the masts on, but I would have painted the sails and the masts beforehand, because it is a bit of a bugger to get in behind the sails with a brush, because the sail behind it gets in the way. So at the very least, you'd really be better leaving the middle one off before you paint the first one. But as I say, I'm going to fix that. I'm also going to I'm going to also shade probably completely paint the sails before I assemble it, so I've got the right shading. As my usual wash technique is hard to do when you can't get the brush in to do it properly. So that's that. I would also paint the details like the gun barrels on the deck, which would be little brass, bronzy coloured things at this point. And I'd also make sure that everything was lined up, like the bowsprit was going along the midline of the ship, which this one doesn't, and little details like that. It's okay, but it's not perfect, and whilst I fight the temptation to be a perfectionist, it is actually a mental health issue in a lot of people, and has triggered my mental health issues, I'll tell you that much. I can do better than this, and I'm going to do better than this. The other thing is that stupid things like this one. You may notice that the bowsprit is wonky. It should point forwards, it points slightly to one side, and that was largely because I assembled it without checking everything was lined up properly. And again, I can do better than that, and I will do better than that, as you will see. I also did a bit of a silly, but I could fix that on the water. The water, I painted what I was told was Space Wolf Blue. Now, Space Wolf Blue is the colour I traditionally did my World War II and World War I ships, the water around them in, and it's a quite nice blue. It's grey green, sort of. It's a nice colour for seawater. It's not a realistic colour for seawater, but it's a nice colour for seawater. So I painted this, the army painted version of Space Wolf Blue, which is much lighter than the actual original. I then repainted it. You can possibly see it. I fished the paint out, but it's basically extremely light colour. This is Templar Blue from Reaper, which is nearer the colour that I was thinking of, and I decided to make it a bit more interesting visually. And again, visual interest is a thing you always want to do on models, by putting a wash of pine green over it. And I will, on the final ones, be picking out wakes and waves and stuff on the ship. So again, it's okay, but I could do a lot better, and I'm going to do a lot better. The other thing about having to replace the ships is I broke under the strain of looking at them and decided that I would have a try of a 1/600 version, which is twice the scale of this. This is 1/1200, as I said, and will allow me to do more detail and be a bit more of an impressive model. I bought a schooner because they're not expensive. They're about the same price as the big ships in the smaller scale, and I'll be trying that. But I may be building a couple of squadrons of 1/600 ships, so we can do. So I can organise naval gaming. I'm thinking as a rule set of using Kiss Me Hardy. I've never played Kiss Me Hardy, as as I say, I didn't really want to do sailing ships because of the bad experience I'd had with the Navmor metal ones. And whilst companies like Langton do utterly gorgeous models, they are absolutely beautiful, they're also horrendously expensive, and again, being metal models, they're going to be a swine to assemble, even if they're better engineered than the Navmor ones were. So these are perfect, they're good playing pieces, and if I get them set up properly so that things don't, so that they paint nicely and they look nice and they all end up on the base nicely, then I think I'm going to enjoy getting into Napoleonic naval warfare, or American War of Independence naval warfare, or War of 1812 naval warfare, and that sort of thing in either this scale or 1600s. I could have got 1700s, but it seemed to be a bit betwixt and between. So we're sticking with 1200s for these and 1600s for smaller actions. It also means you can use things like gunboats and stuff like that and actually have them seeable. I'm not entirely sure how you'd base a gunboat, but I'd probably put a squadron on the base. Gunboats and the very similar sized bombardment ships, which generally had a dirty great big mortar in the middle of them. Bomb catchers, I think they were called. So I'm going to be doing that, and you're probably going to be seeing some naval warfare. And if I get these to my satisfaction, you'll be seeing these on the Etsy shop, because they're fun to do. And I like painting fun stuff, and I like repeatedly doing fun stuff. So if you want a naval ship, a pre-painted naval squadron, you might be looking on it. You might be able to come to the Etsy shop in a month or two and be able to get one. Again, I need to do stuff about the Etsy shop, and this is part of the plan. Now, it wasn't originally, but why shouldn't it be? Anyway, I think that's about enough for me for now. Take care, everybody, and goodbye. Bye.